if you miss us live, you can listen to us wherever you get your podcast. So we're in season 5, and as you know, I do this new show for season 5, which is a one-on-one interview show. And the point of the one-on-one interview show is really to get some input on the journey of the guests that I bring, but more importantly, get their feedback on what's going on. It is not a hard question show. That's not the point of it. The point of it is really to get some insight from someone who's in dealers all the time, works in dealerships, to help the industry one show at a time, which of course is our mission at the Auto Hub Show. So I wanted to introduce Chad. So Chad, maybe you can tell us more about what you do, where you come from, what your journey is, and kind of what your thoughts are in 2024 as we end the year.
Yeah, no, it's great, and thanks for your time today. So yeah, my name is Chad Staples. I'm the president and founder of Elevation Dealer Services. We are a nationwide F&I product agency that specializes in structuring reinsurance companies, educating on investment policy statements, and maximizing wealth for dealers, income development and compliance as well, and overall just being that general relationship with the dealer. And it was kind of unique how I ended up here because I've been in automotive for about 17 years. I grew up here in the state of Arizona in the Phoenix area. And one of my best friends from college at Arizona State University, his family has always owned a Buick Pontiac GMC store. And I initially out of college had started working at Allstate on the property casualty side, being a producer. And, the money really wasn't there, and I just wasn't in love with it. I liked things a little bit more tangible at that point. And so when I listened to Tyler and he gave me an opportunity, his family gave me an opportunity to work at the store, it just kind of took off and blossomed from there. But funny enough, early on in my career, there was an agent at my store that did an IAS, super poly steel, and some tire programs, and he was trying to educate us on love bugs, and it was kind of funny because I'm like, what in the hell is a love bug? We don't have those in Arizona. And so his name was Charlie Brown. He was very impactful on me, so through the course of my career, whether it was working at the company that now owns the brand LoJack, before years ago when it was called Skylink, before Spirion acquired it and so forth. I was there a number of years. I worked at APCO Holdings for a number of years as a regional director. I ran a team of people working in the VSC space and doing training.
Right.
And then ultimately went back to a large independent dealer group that I'd helped kind of procure their F&I department and build it up to what it is. And then from there, I went to a large agency and kind of ran that ship while we went through an acquisition. And then, I was put in a position 2 years ago in February to start my own. And so that's where I'm at now.
Yeah, so I mean, I've in the past worked for a small company called Safeguard Corp, and I worked for Nissan Canada, Nissan Infiniti. So I managed 68 stores, Western Zone. So if you're not familiar, from Winnipeg to the Yukon, which is roughly
Hmm.
probably larger than the United States in terms of physical size, with a few stores in it. So I spent a lot of time on a plane and a car in questionable back roads, teaching dealers how to sell Nissan branded products in F&I. I have a deep background in automotive myself, 25 years plus a family history going back over 100. But
Wow.
what I found was interesting was we had other companies selling products in the Nissan store, which was fine. But what
Hmm.
was really interesting, because I actually went through the training with Safeguard University and also certified people in menu selling, which was somewhat new at the time. This was 8, 10 years ago in the Canadian market. What was really interesting was I'd get the fight from the old school business office manager who is selling life and disability. There's a company in Canada called First Canadian that sells this product. And I remember training, I think it was a Nissan Infiniti dealer owned by the Dilawri Group, which is the largest group in Canada. They have 80 franchises. Arguably not, because FAF is owned by Lithia, so they have more. But
Mm.
and I had the old school step selling finance manager on the one side, and then the young Vietnamese lady on the other side. So I was training them both, and I said to the one, I said, okay, well, she's already beating you, and she just started using these tactics. You're still
Mm.
using step selling, and you're starting the conversation with death. And yeah, it probably doesn't go very well most of the time. So it was kind of funny conversation. So fast forward 8 to 10 years, a gentleman that I trained actually in that territory, I initially managed it by myself. He basically was talking. He's moved since from that into industrial sales of different used equipment. I don't know. But my question for you is today, as we get into the reality, which Steve Greenfeld predicted 2 years ago, which was that we hadn't figured everything out in the car business, that we are going to go back to limited front end margins again. And I remember hearing him present this at, I think it was Used Car Week. And the dealer's like, oh yeah, we got it all figured out now. We're going to make money for days. Magically, we've got everything solved. It's working like a fine oiled machine. Customers are never going to want to discount again. It's going to be an order system, and they're going to deliver cars, and it's going to be great. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, I don't think so. So now we look at now at the current marketplace. What are you seeing as you work with dealers where they say, "Hey, yeah, I gotta have finance managers who produce again because my salespeople are now as weak as they were 5 years ago on the
Hmm.
front." What do you think?
So we're seeing a multitude of things. We saw a little bit of reactionary stuff with, the FTC coming down on
Yeah,
a number of dealer groups throughout the country for what they would call as discriminatory practices. However, but they don't allow you to peel back the onion and go to discovery in the court of law. They just kind of threaten you really hard and want
yeah,
you to settle, and then smear your name all over the news. But ultimately, we saw a lot of dealers because of that pulling back on ads. But then you're seeing now they're like, we're losing money. Now we need to put ads back. And it's like, ads are not a bad thing.
yeah,
They're actually a great thing as long as you're building products of value. And really what we're seeing is it comes down to process. Great times make weak people. So the problem was we all got lazy. We all thought we were rich and good looking because of us. And it was quite frankly the momentum in the marketplace, right?
yeah,
And so what we've seen is incrementally finding better products of value and really training in a process to where, yeah, the salespeople have a little bit of skin in the game, so they know enough to just plant the seed. But then ultimately, we're allowing the sales management to come in and do their EMIs and to be
yeah,
engaged with the customer. And then lastly, also having the finance team do those EMIs as well, and having those greets and setting up the stage with questions and having that F&I questionnaire, or if there's a different iPad app that walks them through some of the stuff that kind of tees up their lifestyle and correlates that to some
right,
products
right.
ultimately for higher penetration rates. So that's ultimately what we're seeing, and we've training has never been more important, because at the end of the day, a lot of dealers aren't doing it. A lot of guys are doing stuff just to get by.
Yeah.
And what worked yesterday is kind of working for them today, but it's ultimately going to come to a head to where it's going to be a cost of turnover, and ultimately you're going to have to replace some of those people, and they're going to be back at square one.
And what's your opinion? I know OEMs and even dealers now with digital retail, which we had shows on a number of years ago where we pitted them against each other. Now it's kind of, I'm not sure where that status is today with Roadster and Moto Insight and those kind of companies. But what's your opinion of dealers trying or manufacturers trying to sell products online as they configure a car? Like, how is that working out or not working out these days now that we're post pandemic? What's your opinion there?
I think some product brand segments OEMs are working. Tesla seems to be still obviously working, but outside of that, people want to touch and feel things, and you've really
Right.
seen the DR. A lot of DR companies have either laid people off or diminished completely altogether. Obviously, we saw what happened with Vroom, right?
Yeah.
So when you're considering these things, and some dealers are still providing that level of concierge, or they're still providing transit transport vehicles from state to state, we're still going to see that because there's going to be scarcity of inventory of
Right.
specific models that are highly wanted. But outside of that, you're really seeing that people are going back to wanting to be in a brick and mortar and engage in that experience. And the last thing that I've also realized too is things were so transactional COVID wise, where it was like all the sales training that you saw on the marketplace was, oh, I'm going to show you how to overcome that objection. But the reality of it is, the more relational you are, the longer you're going to stay in the game. I love the book by Simon Sinek, Infinite Game, and it
Yeah.
just talks about you're doing the things necessary to stay in it as long as possible. And by doing such, you're not looking at the short term profit. You're looking at the long term retention and lifestyle of that relationship and life cycle of it.
Yeah, I mean, we always talk when I was doing training about understanding the customer and presenting products that made sense for that customer, but also when I look at products like A to Z Sync and one of the sponsors show vid calls where we're doing a two-way video call even before they hit the store. We're going to be adding multiple languages as we roll into 2025 as well. When you look at that, you go, okay, I still need someone to go over these products with me, A, for compliance, and you probably want to record that just in case someone does a misstep, but also just so the customer is aware of them. I mean, what always shocked me as I moved people from, say, a step selling to a menu selling is what I heard from the business managers was they're buying products that I've never even sold before. I said, yeah, because you're giving them options before you just assumed you knew. So the other
Mhm.
thing that's really interesting that you brought up on the retention side, and I know there was an article this morning, I think it was, I'm not sure who put it up on that manufacturers and dealers are getting better at retaining customers. We also look at things like recall, but also the retention of that customer with a product. I mean, what's your opinion there as you get some fights from the business manager. They go, well, the customer doesn't really want that. But what's your opinion of sort of that retention piece of selling products? I know salesmen sometimes think business managers are snake oil salesmen, but what's your thought on how
So
that
that's it.
really impacts it? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I've got kind of a twofold answer to that. We work with approximately about 300 dealers nationwide. We have a team of 10, and what we've seen through that, and we pay tons of claims on the used car side, and cost the inflation has been the silent killer. You've seen that parts and labor costs have gone up so substantially, and now the service contract premiums are starting to slowly increase. But people that over the years that would have said, like people have had experience with home warranties where they're like, dude, it doesn't cover anything. Well, the great part about these service contracts is if you're educated properly and you do buy exclusionary coverage, which mirrors as close to the factory coverage as possible, it's going to be covered. And you got to make sure that there's no gotchas and no aggregate
Yeah.
limits and stuff like that. But when those customers have that experience where they bought a service plan and they've brought that car in and it got them out of a pickle and it actually paid out fully and it got them in a rental car, it kept them going to work and their kids to school, all of a sudden they have a victory story. The second thing too that I was thinking about was why buy here's. We've got these why buy here bundles and we talk about the ownership experience of your life cycle trade is going to be 3-ish years, maybe 4.
Yeah.
So when you have these customers and you're talking about, you know, tire and wheel, if you have an inclusive tire and wheel program that covers a substantial amount that doesn't have aggregate limits, and someone does get on, has a flat tire somewhere and it's fully taken care of. I mean, just that ease of that friction of what you experience can cause a story in someone's life to be one of your greatest fans. And we're seeing that a lot, and it's keeping your car in the best possible shape so that when you do come in to trade that vehicle, and it's going to be worth the absolute most it could be for that trade value.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you look at used car prices over the last couple of years, they've been a little bit crazy, and I'm sure that'll eventually adjust. But when you look at that, I was actually having a discussion yesterday on the non-prime side of the business because I did a panel a couple of years ago in Toronto. They'd never done a panel on non-prime, which was their subprime, which I thought was hilarious. But I did a show, I think a couple of weeks ago with two experts in that sector. When you look at that person that maybe is having trouble making a payment because maybe their credit's less than perfect, not that say that's a lot of people, that's probably even more important for them because they don't need surprises. Like I don't
Mhm.
want to have an extra cost when my payment is higher because maybe I don't pay people as well as some people or I had something happen in my life. And on
Mhm.
the used car side, obviously that's probably what they're buying just because even though it may not be a lot less, it is some. What's your opinion on sort of the used versus new tactics for a dealer that says, hey, 30% of my customers maybe don't have great credit or don't have perfect credit and maybe they have to source it somewhere else? I mean, what's your opinion on how they can maximize that and help the customer at the same time?
So I was talking to a friend of mine he's a dealer principal. They have a number of stores in Texas, and when we were talking about it, their areas they're in, he was asking about ads and how's the increase, and obviously there's a good amount of subprime, but there's also I asked him what the median income was, and he was like, it's probably about 40 grand a year is what we've seen. I said,
Yeah,
okay, so we already know affordability is an issue,
yeah,
right? An average new car is going to be right around that $50,000 price tag. It's anywhere from 45 to 50, depending on the brand segment. And so
yeah.
when you're talking about that at simple interest financing, at rates of what they are today, it's unaffordable for a lot of people on the new car side. I said, so diversification of your inventory is going to be very vital to be able to, like you said, it could have been a circumstantial event that why this
Yeah.
person is in subprime right now. But 5 years from now, they may be in a better job, in a better place, and their credit could be in a better spot. So knowing that, how do you retain those customers? You need to be able to offer cars that are within that affordability segment for them, number one. And number two, products that also have a comprehensive program around that that will protect them and keep them paying on those auto loans during that time too. So I think those things are very vital. Dealers that haven't thought about that because they would think, oh, I don't want to keep higher mileage cars because it's brain damage or it might impact my reinsurance.
Yeah.
It's really good to have a supplemental program because at the end of the day, you're just missing out on market share. They're going to be buying cars from someone if it's not you. And guess what? When they sell them a car somewhere else, they're probably going to try to retain them somewhere else. So you missed out on them twofold.
Oh yeah, I mean the thing that really shocked me a couple of years ago was I think in the U.S. at that time was about a 30 to 40% near prime or subprime market, and in Canada at that point I think it was about 25%. But now markets are basically the same. So I'm
Hmm.
looking at it, and I remember having this panel. We had two Canadian experts and a couple of U.S. experts on it talking about it, and some of the dealers were falling off their chair when they realized they were losing 25% of the business because they would broom the customer when they said they had bad credit. They're like, "Oh, those people don't buy here," and I'm sitting there going, "What do you mean? Like when you have 30, let's just say the average is 30%, that's a huge number. But more
Hmm.
importantly, those customers, to your point, after they make payments for 2 years or 3 years, they may come back and buy a different vehicle and still want to deal with you because you treated them right. Where the other dealer is like, yeah, I'm not dealing with you. Because like we
Hmm.
sell Mercedes Benz or whatever the brand is. But the other one that was kind of funny yesterday was this new Jaguar ad
I saw it.
which I think is like, I don't know what they were doing. I mean, I kind of was echoing Bud Light, but more importantly, when's the last time you saw a car ad without a car in it from a
Right.
brand like Jaguar? Like, what are you doing? Like, what, like, why? Like, I just didn't get that at all. Like, it just made no sense to me. I don't know.
I saw a comment on Twitter and on that feed last night actually,
Yeah.
and it said, "Man, this ad makes me want to sell my Jaguar, and I don't even have a Jaguar."
Yeah, I don't even want to be associated with the Jaguar customer. But the thing that was funny for me,
Yeah.
and I have a buddy who's a big Jag person. As a kid, I liked obviously the XJ
Oh
and,
yeah.
and all
Oh
that
yeah.
stuff. And my grandfather always used to say you had to have two because you had to have one to drive when the other one was being
Nice
fixed.
in the
But
shop. Yep.
but when I look at it and you go, okay, here's a brand known for style, design, maybe engineering, and you don't even have anything in the ad about those things. Like there's nothing about that at all. I'm sitting there going like, what?
Mm-mm.
What do you do? It was just funny, but more importantly, when you look at car brands and advertising today, and when you look at, okay, I want to retain my customer and I want to like basically create a great experience, which I think every brand is trying to do today, including Tesla and Lucid and whatever. Why
Hmm.
wouldn't you talk about how that customer can make it more affordable by adding protection to that car because of the cost of it? I mean, I'm shocked that the manufacturer doesn't talk about that. They talk about cost of ownership, but they really don't talk about, okay, I'm spending $50,000 or whatever that number is on average. Here's how you can make it more affordable during the ownership term, not gas and maintenance, but here's how you do that. Why do you think they don't spin on that as opposed to the flashy ad with like, a Marvel movie or something? I mean, what do you think?
I well, I think because there's a lot of third party administrators in the game. Number one,
Yeah.
the, complexity is the enemy of execution. So I do believe that you can't be a jack of all trades and a master of none.
Right.
You're trying to do too much. When GM had so many brand segments, it was too big to fail,
Yeah.
basically.
The general.
So yeah, yeah, and so you go through that type of stuff, and then realistically, I think that in that because parts and service makes most of the money at every store, right out there. They call it service absorption for a reason.
Yep.
80 cents for every dollar goes right to the bottom line in the service drive. And
Yep.
customer pay ROs is where the money is made because when you have a service contract, extended service plan, I would say a good 60% of them have a flat rate negotiated labor rate
Yeah.
where the customer either has to pay the delta or the dealer will negotiate and reduce the cost just like you see on your healthcare bill when you have your
Yeah.
health insurance all of a sudden reduce it. So I
Right.
think that that's part of it. And realistically none of them own their own administrators. If you look at every OEM,
Yeah.
they have some other TPA under there. You got the Safeguards of the
Yeah.
world, you have the J&Os of the
JMA.
world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And so they're the ones administering it. And so the OEMs aren't taking that in solely. Ford owned Easy Care for a number of years. Larry Dorfman, one of my mentors, he sold the business to Ford and then bought it back a number of years later. Just a brilliant deal. But
Yeah.
that's what we see. So I think that's the main reason why you don't see them advertising that type of stuff.
So how can a dealer who maybe, I don't know, wants to protect the customer and create a different experience in a competitive market start that conversation when they're talking about the car, say on the showroom floor? Like, how do you train that salesman or woman who maybe, I don't know, not to beat them up, might not be the most detail-oriented person, to say, hey, like, what did you get last time? What were the challenges you had last time? Like, how do you deal with that elephant in the room? I know the business managers want to handle it all, but how do you deal with that elephant in the room?
Well, I think really we as people want to be seen as people, and we want to have value. So the more that when we train our folks, if we have either Why Buy Here programs, an engine for life, or anything like that, some 10-year, 100,000 mile limited warranty that we have on the powertrain that we're offering at our store, things of that nature that people can believe in, because then you have testimonials that you can show your
Yeah.
salespeople and say, look, this worked for Mr. Smith, this worked for Mrs. Jackson, as you're going through this, and that they can be inspired, because the best salespeople are the best storytellers. And so when you can tell these, just like when you received a car on trade, the story behind that car. So when you're selling it to the next customer, they're bought in because you know who had it, what they did, how long they've had it, and a little bit about them in their life. And so if you can then inspire your salespeople by having great training in that capacity, it can go a long way to building a great customer retention and increased product penetration.
Fantastic. So when you're working with a dealer or maybe a dealer is interested in your services, like, what does that look like? What's the upside for the dealer? And actually, there was a dealer on LinkedIn has been getting beat up a lot lately because he's saying everything should be free for 90 days from vendors. And I was like, vendors have their opportunity to work with you or not. Like, I know you don't want to work with them, fine, but 90-day test drive is probably not realistic. But when you're working with a dealer, what's that look like for them? How quickly can they get set up with you? But also, what's the upside? Like, what's the kind of results they can expect? Obviously, not that dealer I was talking about,
Yeah.
Mr.
Well,
Mr.
yeah, no, and even to that point, with what we do with the F&I products, we don't charge a monthly fee. So
Yeah,
we're built into the product sales. We make a small commission on that. And so really our motto is we put the dealer first. And so what does that look like? We try to educate on the different levels of reinsurance programs that are available
yeah,
based on the dealer's appetite for growth and what they're looking to accomplish. And there's different elections with the IRS depending on what they're trying to accomplish. From
right,
there, we look at what's called an investment policy statement that the underwriter will manage and tell you basically you can do a certain percentage of your unearned premium in equities. And from there, what we like to do is we look at a 35 to 50% an inequities program that yields a substantial amount of difference. So here's an example. If a dealer puts $100,000 a month in their reinsurance company over 20 years and they follow the S&P 500 and the US bond index 50-50 on there versus even an 80-20, which the JMNAs and many of the others are out there,
yeah.
over a 20-year period, it's an $11 million difference. So that's the delta you're able to achieve when you educate dealers on these different programs rather than just putting something in some black box fund that's dictated by a bank. You don't know what's in it. Hey, it's RIP, right? It's proprietary, as they say. Everybody loves that word. But the reality of it is you don't know what's in it, but you're only getting a certain percentage. So we have a wealth advisor we work with that educates them and walks them through that program. Then from there, we work on the income development side. And what we're able to achieve is on average, depending on the product and what they're trying to achieve, we've seen on like tire and wheel increases, 35-40% increases on VSC, depending on where they're at. We've seen 55% increases. And that's just all about because we're not transactional. We're training people to objectively look at a credit report, look at their gross income, net income, disposable, talk about fixed versus variable, and go through all of the different just human elements of it and life and how it makes sense. And from there, then conveying those products of value based on how long they plan on owning their vehicle and what you've seen with their previous vehicle. And so when you couple all of that together with compliance, and we're looking at doing rate exception forms and just other levels of documentation to make sure that 100% of the customers are getting 100% of the products 100% of the time,
Right.
and that there's no room for any federal or state official to come in to give scrutinization, then we're doing our full job. And so that's typically what we do. And it's kind of a lot, but it's really simple. When we have these conversations with the dealer, I just like to ask questions and get to know them and what they want to do. If they're looking at an M&A in a number of years, okay, we'll help build up this EBITDA. We'll help build this up so that we can maximize the multiple that you have available to you. If you're looking to acquire more dealers, hey, we're going to do an election with the IRS and your reinsurance company that makes sense. So yeah, we're just going to build this up. We're going to do the retail cost accounting method to show, net operating losses for a number of years so that as we move forward, we're going to say, hey, this is how we're going to then buy up a dealership before the taxation would come at year 7, 8, 9, or 10. So there's different strategies based on what their needs are, but it starts with just getting to know them and really understanding them as human beings and where they've come from so that we can connect and we can then plan from them.
Fantastic. So how quickly could someone get started, and what does that process look like if they want to work
Oh
with
goodness.
you?
Quite honestly, if we have a conversation and we get to know them over, let's say we get to know each other over a few hours or what have you, from enrollment to execution, we can get somebody kicked off in a week and a half's notice. It's pretty quickly. So that doesn't take very long. Company formations, we usually warehouse the reinsurance premium and all of that. We can do it up to 9 months on average. And then the formations take a couple of months from there, depending on where we domicile them. But it doesn't take long, and we're very engaged. And like I said, we have a team across the nation. We have 10 salespeople, so we have a team of experts that have all been in the industry a number of years, and that just want to win and have fun.
And then why would someone choose you guys over, I don't know, some of the other guys in the industry?
Yeah, no, I guess that's a good question. Look, there are a lot of great people out there, and my honest opinion would be I'm probably no better than them, but what I will do is I'll always tell the truth, always do the right thing. We will always be 100% transparent about all opportunities up front. And the great part about it is with the unique path that I've had with, being a large administrator and running a large agency and being in retail for a number of years, I've had kind of all three levels of it. And now that I'm in my own situation where I've set up multiple reinsurance companies and I've seen the good, bad, and the ugly, I've
Yep.
kind of learned from those scars. So that unique experience and having great mentors around me have shaped me and enabled me to serve a dealer at the optimal level as possible, and for maybe cheaper than some of the large conglomerates out there.
Fair enough. Thanks for taking the time today. Enjoy your service experience. Hopefully, your vehicle gets fixed to your satisfaction. And I will have some details in the description below where you can reach out to Chad at Elevation Dealer Services. Is it elevationdealerservices.com?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for taking the time and have yourself a great weekend. Hopefully, you're driving pretty with your vehicle there, but you, of course, could always upgrade it to something newer and better and bigger, I'm sure. But thanks for taking
Absolutely.
the time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right.
Bye for
Appreciate
now. And
you.
if you're at NADA, drop by the Velo booth. I'll be doing interviews at the show. And obviously, you can meet the team at Velo. Hey, if you miss us live, you can listen to us wherever you get your podcast.